Welcome to a new F1 update from the Abu Dhabi paddock. Of course, ahead of the big title decider this weekend. All eyes on Formula 1 this weekend, and that's definitely something to be seen during today's media day. The press conference room was absolutely packed. Never seen it this busy before in all the years before in the paddock. And for good reason, because the FIA put Lando Norris, Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri all together in the press conference. And basically it became some kind of contest who can act the coolest. And that led to some amusing bits. The best part was Lando, when he got asked about the pressure, he said, well, I don't really feel the pressure because if I win it or not, it will not change my life. Later on in the press conference, he got asked again about what it would mean if he actually wins the title. And then he replied, oh yeah, it would mean the world and it would mean that my life so far has been a success. I think the second answer was much more honest than the first one. But no one wanted to show any weaknesses and want to pretend that they are relaxed. Maybe Max Verstappen to some extent is relaxed as well. And he tried to use that a bit in his advantage with some mind games and maybe even next level trolling. That's what he did when he pointed to the World Championship trophy that was located left of the drivers. And he said, well, I already have 4 of those at home. So for me, it will not change the world. The funny bit when he got asked about how he prepares for this weekend, he said, well, I spent some time with my daughter. I prepared my GT3 team for next year and also prepared my sim racing team for next year. So Max playing it cool. The most interesting element of that press conference was one of the scenarios that's talked about a lot in the paddock and I'm sure also among fans. What does McLaren do if at the end of the race Max Verstappen leads the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix? Oscar Piastri is in P3 and Lando Norris is in P4. That question came up and Lando said, if it happens, I will not ask for a team order. If that's true, whether that's true or not, that remains to be seen. Max Verstappen smiled a little bit when he got asked about it in the Dutch media session later today. But anyway, McLaren has made very, very clear already Sunday night on Qatar, they will not enter the weekend with team orders, so no team orders for Oscar Piastri throughout the weekend. Also, nothing changes in terms of sharing the data or qualifying order, like going out of the box. Everything business as usual. Also, at the start of the race, no team orders. But McLaren has made pretty clear also off the record that if this specific scenario comes up at some point, then they will ask, I mean, Lando doesn't even need to ask himself, but they will ask Oscar to probably move over. Just because McLaren in that specific scenario wants to make sure that one of the papaya drivers is winning the world title and not Max Verstappen. So the situation is pretty straightforward. Oscar has all chances to chase his own dream and his aspirations, as Stella pointed out again. But if he's in a position that he cannot win it anymore, and that is basically Lando's title to lose, then they might ask him for a favor. And also the team feels that he would be supportive in that case, given he committed his long-term future, and of course that can change. But what not can change, he committed his future for 2026 to the team. So to keep peace in the team, they expect Oscar to be supportive if that scenario comes up. Max Verstappen got asked about it. Basically, if he would see a McLaren team order even as a weakness after the season they've had and given the really more than competitive and maybe at times even dominant car they've had. And Max said, well, maybe not really a weakness, because at the end of the day, it's all about having that trophy in your living room only 20 years from now. And 20 years from now, no one will remember how you got the trophy, but they will remember that you ended up being a world champion. So Max Verstappen would understand that. He pointed out for him, the main thing is to make sure that he wins the race. Of course, that's basically a must, if nothing strange happens to Lando at least. So it's a must for him to win the race. But he said, I don't think we will be the quickest. And that has 2 reasons. First of all, the season as a whole and McLaren having still the more competitive car. But also this specific track layout. It has a little bit of everything. And of course, the McLaren car has been by far the best all-rounder. So he expects McLaren to be strong around this racetrack, which is also backed up by the last couple of years. The statistics, McLaren has been good here in recent years, or recent seasons. So Max said, we just have to maximize our own performance, our own car, and hope that we are close. One other interesting bit is if he ends up in the position to win the race, of course, the rest is out of his control, but maybe he can do some bits to spice it up, like Lewis Hamilton did in 2016 when he backed up the whole field and tried to make Nico Rosberg lose more positions. in the Dutch media session, Max got the question, are you thinking about doing something similar if that's needed? And then he didn't answer the questions for a couple of seconds, which basically led to everyone in the room laughing. And then after that, Max said, well, the layout is a bit more difficult now. They removed one of the slow speed corners, one of the chicanes. So it's difficult to back someone up. Slipstream effect has become much bigger compared to 2016. And also, he said back in 2016, the tires were overheating quickly. And this year's Pirelli tires are a bit more robust. So he said it's more difficult. But he didn't say he will not do it. And everyone knowing Max Verstappen and his winner's mindset and winner's mentality probably knows that he will do everything within his power and everything he can to add a 5th trophy to the collection. So yeah, all chat today about the title decider. Also with 17 drivers that are not in it. Basically, all of them got asked about it. Some of them were quite outspoken. For example, Bortoletto and Nico Hülkenberg, also friends of Max, but they said, at least Bortoletto was really straightforward in saying, I think Max deserves it more than anyone because he made the least mistakes, etc. All of them basically said, if the race is pretty boring, we will look at the big screens around the track more than we usually do. So everyone wants to follow Sunday's race. The best reply to all the title chat came from Fernando Alonso. In his media session, he was asked, okay, if Max doesn't win it, does that mean that the best driver has not won the world title this year? Fernando smiled and said, well, it has been like that for 19 years already. And that goes back to him winning the championship in 2005 and 2006. And yeah, he made a joke that after that, the best driver hasn't won the title in any year, basically. So that was a good reply. All focus on the three-way fight. But we have to talk about 2 other topics as well. The first one already came up on Sunday night in Qatar, and that's the Red Bull driver decision. I already pointed out it will be announced on Tuesday, and that's exactly what happened. It also exactly happened as we expected. So Isaac Hadjar gets promoted to Red Bull Racing for 2026, and the Racing Bulls will be Lindblad and Lawson. Yuki Tsunoda ends up as the reserve driver as part of a bigger Honda Red Bull TPC deal. So to make sure that they can still do the TPC test in 26 and also 27, which will also again be important for Lindblad to give him some more running in F1 machinery, even though the 26 cars will be completely different, but to get him some more F1 mileage if that's needed. Of course, today was a chance to talk to all the drivers. Hadjar was in the press conference and said, well, he knew what was coming, but he officially got told by Helmut Marko on Sunday night after the race. That's also when Yuki Tsunoda got told that he will not have an F1 seat next year. So Sunday night was the moment to communicate it with the drivers. Hadjar said, no, going into 2026, I have no expectations at all. But he repeated that in his opinion, it's the best possible timing for such a promotion, because he once again said all the issues that we talk about now with the second Red Bull seat, they will not exist anymore in 2026. Still, I wonder if that's probably a little bit too optimistic, because he still has to fight Max Verstappen in equal machinery. But he said, well, new generation of cars, a reset for everyone. And then it's all about adapting. And adapting is something that Isaac Hadjar, in his own opinion, is pretty good at. Because he said, in my whole career, I've never driven the same car for 2 years. So for me, it's normal to be thrown into the deep and to get used to something new completely every single year. So that's what 2026 will be for him. Of course, for Yuki Tsunoda, it will be a season at the sidelines. And that prompted me to ask him in his media session today if in hindsight, because he always said, I've been fully focused on the Red Bull family, on securing a seat, fully committed to getting one of those 4 Red Bull seats. So I asked him in hindsight, would you have done anything differently? Would you have pursued options elsewhere? And if so, do you think those options were realistic at any other team? And his answer was quite open and interesting, because he said, yes, there has been interest from other F1 teams for a 2026 race seat. Of course, he didn't want to mention any names or make it more specific than that. But he said, yes, some teams have shown interest. But, and this is the most interesting bit, I was not allowed to have talks. I was not allowed to have conversations or even negotiations with them because of my contract. So he said the contract was quite limited and basically forced him to stay focused on Red Bull and not to get in touch with any other teams. And that has partly contributed to him being the reserve driver next year. He still hopes to find a way back into F1. And within the Red Bull family and knowing how they can promote but also demote drivers pretty quickly, it's maybe not even impossible. But yeah, for now, it's been a massive disappointment for Yuki Tsunoda. The final topic we have to talk about, and that's an important one, that's the abuse that Andrea Kimi Antonelli has received after the Qatar Grand Prix. Even death threats, and Antonelli put his social media, at least the profile pictures, on black. And today he said it's been pretty difficult and far from easy to deal with all the online hate. Part of it, of course, goes back to the race. First of all, the TV, the world feed, not showing it properly, because the way they cut it, it looked like probably he waved him by. But if you see the Lando Norris onboard, you can actually, pretty easily see that he had two massive moments and almost lost the car. And the second element is Red Bull, with Giampiero Lambiase first saying it on the radio, and then Helmut Marko mentioning it when speaking to us. We have to say back then, also when Helmut Marko talked to us, he hadn't seen the other footage yet. So he just made a mistake, and also he apologized for it. Afterwards, Marko apologized and Red Bull put out a statement. Some drivers, including Franco Colapinto, said, yes, but I mean, when they put out a statement, apparently everything is fine again. But he said when we use a swear word in the press conference, we get fined or get penalized like Max Verstappen was. But he said, what about people saying something completely wrong and maybe sparking hate in doing so? Should that be penalized in any way? I would say that's incredibly difficult, because someone can simply make a mistake when giving an interview. And if you're not allowed to make a mistake again, then this whole F1 media world is getting pretty complicated, I would say. And that's also the conclusion that Max Verstappen came to. He said, well, Marko made a mistake, we made a mistake, but Marko apologized. But he said, even though Marko made a mistake, that's still no excuse for idiots or keyboard warriors, as he referred to it, to insult someone or basically say whatever they want. So he said that's not a Red Bull or that's not a Helmut Marko problem, but that's a social media problem, and maybe not even just the F1 problem, but a much bigger problem in society. Let's hope it doesn't get that far this weekend, that it will not end up being that controversial. But it all remains to be seen. So first of all, start with the free practice session tomorrow. After that, we will be back with a new F1 update from the paddock. So thanks for watching and hope to see you again tomorrow.